All right, welcome to the Bow Trader Podcast. Whether you're a longtime listener or joining us for the first time, man, I'm glad you're here. My name's John Keene, and I am the founder of Bow Trader, and we're just excited to be able to do this podcast and bring this to you on a weekly basis. You know, on the podcast, we're diving headfirst into the wild world of hunting and the great outdoors. We talk about all kind of different things, whether it's tracking and scouting tactics or just cutting up and telling silly tales and stories about things that we've gotten into when we've been out there trying to do some hunting. But we're always focused on the beauty of God's creation. From gear reviews and how to practice to finally making it to that awesome thwack of fall, buddy, we are here for it. Our faith is woven into every episode with real, down-to-earth discussions because it's not just about the hunt. It's truly about what matters most. So grab your gear, settle in, get you a cup of coffee, and let's get after it. Hit the button here and we'll get started. Okay, so we got Brandon across the table here this morning.
Howdy.
There we go. He's always mixing it up.
I try not to get stale, just something fresh.
I think it's great.
Got to throw something different in there every now and then.
There you go. All right, so we got a new voice down there. So this is Nate. Nate, tell everybody hello.
How's it going, everyone?
It was close. It was so close.
Definitely so far I've been the most obedient.
You have been. Anyway. It's been a running joke we have. I tell somebody to say something and, either they say exactly what I said or, kind of like what you did and just say, I don't even know what you said, but anyway, perfect. It's perfect. But anyway, so Nate is, if you guys will remember, if you follow us on social media or anything like that, you'll remember that last year we did a bow that I had custom Cerakoted by C&B Coatings down in Savannah. Chris did a phenomenal job on this bow for me, and it was a Hoyt Alpha X 30. And what we did, it's really a tribute bow to the 13 soldiers that lost their lives when we did our disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. And if that offends you, you need to go and really read and look at what we did. And it was just a disaster. It just wasn't handled correctly. Nobody should have lost their lives. And so we did that bow as a tribute to those soldiers. All 13 of them, their names are engraved on that bow. And then we did a campaign to try to give that bow away. And we did it through social media because that's the easiest way to do something like that. And it was different. It wasn't just a regular giveaway where we were like, hey, enter to win, and give us your email address and follow us on social media and all this kind of stuff, and you'll be entered to win this bow. We wanted people to tell us their story. And I was amazed. We got thousands of entries. That's cool. And we had some people that entered a lot. And even though they entered a lot, it was counted as one entry.
Yeah.
It wasn't counted as one entry. Let me rephrase that. It was counted as one user, right? So one user might have had 1,500 entries, right? And Nate had like 1,500 entries or something. But that's not why Nate won. It's not why we gave the bow to Nate. We gave it to Nate because of his story. And so I've invited Nate to come on the podcast and share a little bit about his story. But I was amazed by some of the stories that we got. Some of them were, I want my dad to get this bow because he used to be in archery and he's gone through a battle with cancer. And, we would just love to see him get back into it. One of them was a guy that was still deployed. He didn't enter for it. 3 other people entered him for it. Yeah. So that was really cool. But when I read Nate's story, I was going through reading it and I was like, man, this is the guy.
Yeah.
I had no idea who it was. I mean, I knew you because you come in the shop, but excuse me, I had to drink some water there. But when you read somebody's name sometimes, for me at least, I don't put a face with the name.
I'm
immediately.
absolutely terrible with that.
And so I was showing Wes one day, and Wes was going to be here with us this morning, but he wasn't up to it, wasn't feeling good this morning. I was showing Wes. I was like, man, you got to read this story. And he said, what are you talking about? And I showed it to him. He said, wait, Dad, that's Nate. I said, who's Nate? And no, he said, it's Nate, And I said, oh, okay, dang, I didn't even put two and two together. Because I'll know people by first name, but I don't know last name.
Right.
And I was like, his last name's Crissle? Did I pronounce that right?
It's actually Creasel. So like I always just tell people the Y is a double E, but I've had it messed up since as long as I can remember. And as long as you don't add a T in there and make it Crystal, I'm like, I know who you're talking to. So
no, that's perfect. So yes, I showed it to him. He's like, Dad, that's Nate. I was like, all right, well, I said, it's not time to close it out or anything. It's going to run, until Thanksgiving or whatever the date was that it was gonna close. So we left it open and let a bunch of stuff continue to come in. And I mean, hands down, you had the best story, because of, some of the interaction that you had with some of those folks. Mm-hmm. And, so I thought that was really cool. So, I want you to share some of your story. Like I said, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, about your time in the military. You're still in the military.
Yep.
So talk with us about that, and, we'll ask questions. If we ask a question you don't want to answer, just don't answer it.
All right.
But yeah, share your story with us.
Well, let's see. Where do we start here?
Not with when you were born.
No.
Don't go that far
So
back.
I was born in.
You're right. And my mama said I was the best.
No, so, graduated high school. A few of my friends went off, joined the military. I was one of those kids back in the day that was pretty smart on tests. I was not the smartest bulb, but I'm pretty good at taking tests. So had some good test scores. College I was going to gave me a full academic scholarship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
No, I got it, and I was like, wow, maybe I am kind of smart, Maybe I can prove some people wrong here. And started going, and I was just like, man, this is just, it's not like, I had goals, and still to this day, I would love to get a degree in what I was going for, but it didn't make sense to me that I had to do, classes that pertained nothing. Like, I'm really good at math, and I am terrible at writing essays.
Okay.
So they're like, oh, you're going to, you got to take this English class. I'm like, I want to be, sports medicine athletic trainer. What does me being able to write a paper do with how I can treat an injury in sports and how I'm going to wrap an ankle or tape someone up or something like that? I was like, I don't understand this. 18, 19 years old. I think I know everything, but I know nothing about life at this point.
Man, if I knew half of what I thought I knew when I was 18, I'd be a genius.
Yeah.
I know half of what I knew when I was 18.
That's probably
it's kind of like my grandpa said. It's better to know 10% of something than 100% of nothing.
Yeah.
So,
hey, there you go. I know 10% about a lot of stuff.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm one of those, like, I'll hit you with a weird fact. You'll be like, why do you know about this? I'm like, I don't know. I watched a YouTube video on it one day.
There you go.
That's my depth of knowledge. But no, so I didn't want to put myself into any debt any more than, a normal college kid would do, because my tuition was all paid for, but I was living on campus in the dorms. So I'd taken student loans out for those. And I was like, the juice ain't worth the squeeze here, because I can see the road I'm going down, and it's going to be a lot of money that I don't want to spend. So I was like, all right, I gotta have a plan. And I was like, all right, well, I think I'm going to join the military. And just woke up one day and decided that, I'm going to make a major life change on the fly, and started thinking, what branch would I join? What's going to work for me? And I had 3 or 4 friends from high school, from my graduating class, that had all joined the Marine Corps. And so for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I was like, man, if I do this, at least I can, contact them, and they can kind of guide me through everything. Because I didn't know anybody in the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and, the city I was going to, or, that my parents moved to, that I was living in, there's an Air Force base in town. So, like, I was used to seeing, military
So
But-
where were you living at this time?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So
Where are you from originally?
Atkinson, Nebraska. Little itty bitty town up in the Sandhills,
Got it.
up by I'd say about 45 minutes to an hour from the border of South Dakota.
Okay.
Loved it up there. That's still home to me in a way.
All right. Sure.
I love the small town slow life. I do not like living in a city.
We used to have that here in
Yeah.
Statesboro. It used to be small town slow life. No, it doesn't really feel like that anymore.
No, I can even remember back when I came here, the first time I got stationed here at Fort Stewart and came up through this way and was in Statesboro. And I was like, man, this place not that big. And that was 2016. And even since then, it's insane.
It's crazy how much it's grown.
But yeah, so joined the Marine Corps in 2012. Went to boot camp, played all the fun games that they like to play with you there in San Diego.
Okay.
And for anyone that does listen to those in the Marine Corps, West Coast is forever the best coast. After that, went to school, or the MOS school, got my MOS, and shortly thereafter reported my first unit in Camp Pendleton, California, and got told literally less than 48 hours after I got there, like, hey, we're going to Afghanistan in about 3 months. We're about to go do a month of training. You'll get a couple weeks to leave, and then we're leaving. I was like, you said what?
That was quick.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm 20 years old, don't know nothing, been in the military for all of a week, basically. And they're like, you're going to Afghanistan. And really, like, that back in that time frame, a lot of people my age were joining because they wanted to go to combat, or like that was their calling. And really for me, it was like, I'm just trying to make a little money and stay out of debt and figure out my life.
Yeah.
And, I was pretty physically fit and pretty smart at my job. So I was like, maybe this is a good fit for me. Went to Afghanistan in 2013, came back in 2014. Definitely grew up a lot.
Yeah.
You see a whole different side of the world, and you stop taking for granted what we have here. That was a big thing, because we would go out on patrols and stuff, and you see the village locals, and they would stop and they'd give you bread and chai tea and everything like that. And they're just so thankful for, like, you'd give them, the MREs that we get, our meals, you'd give them a piece of bread out of that, or like a cookie. And it was the greatest thing in the world to them.
So what were you doing? What was your?
So I was a combat engineer.
Okay.
So in Afghanistan, my main job, it kind of depended on the unit you got thrown with. So I got attached to 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, deactivated now, but known as the Walking Dead. And everybody was like, oh yeah, they named the unit after the show. I'm like, no. If you know the unit history, they get that name because of Vietnam. So in Vietnam, 1-9 the whole battalion got wiped out. Like within a matter of 24 to 48 hours. Like, I think it was less than 10% of that battalion was alive.
Wow.
Fast forward like a year later, they had reloaded the battalion, sent them back out. Back in those days, they wore the unit patches on their uniforms that are sewn on in the old uniforms. And the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, were like, they're like, what? We killed all these guys. This doesn't make sense. So they started calling them debauchés, which is the dead walkers in Vietnamese.
Wow.
And so the name stuck and they became the Walking Dead. So.
What about that struck fear in their minds?
Yeah.
Back then?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that's the psychological warfare of that was probably insane back in the day like that. But so it's a huge pride thing to get put in that unit, because they're a unit that only gets reactivated in like stuff has hit the fan.
Right.
And, global war on terror, stuff has hit the fan at that point. And a few years before I got there, they had stood the battalion back up. And I got there right after they had just done a training exercise and had one of the worst training incidents in history. They were up in Bridgeport, California, doing mountain warfare training in the snow, and then they immediately pulled them down to Hawthorne to do all their live fires. And there's lots of reports. Everybody says there's was it 3 truths? There's your truth, my truth, and the truth.
Yeah. Well, let's say there's three sides.
Or, 3 sides.
Yeah, let's say there's 3 sides.
Yeah, there's 3 sides.
Yeah.
So your side, my side, and the truth.
Right,
and
there we go.
I'm sure somewhere in between of those reports is the truth.
Yeah.
Not sure. Knowing a lot of the guys in that unit and the stories they told and the way they explained it, I'll leave that up to interpretation because, I'm not that guy.
Well, you weren't there.
Right? I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, they had lost 7 guys in a training accident in a matter of about 30 seconds. They had a mortar round, which for anyone that doesn't know is basically a shotgun shell with propellant in like a Nerf football. If you remember the old Nerf footballs with the fins on the back, it almost looks just like one. A mortar round looks just like one of those. Well, the story is they double fed in the tube.
Oh my gosh!
And it imploded the tube and killed the 2 mortar teams that were right there, and critically injured some other ones that thankfully survived. But that was 2-3 months before I got to the unit.
Okay.
So like, I had heard the story because I'd been in training. So, you see all the stuff in the Marine Corps that's coming around because small Marine Corps.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm going to that unit. Like, those guys don't play around. And it's a huge pride thing. So went to Afghanistan with them. Was a combat engineer. So I was lead patrol sweep. So I carry around a metal detector in front of our foot patrols and just listen for a beep, hoping to all that is above us that I'm not going to hear that beep.
Yeah.
Because that means, you got to mark, we call it mark and cordon. So you're marking it with baby powder, chem lights, whatever it might be, and either bypassing it, waiting for EOD to come, or we'd call it bipping. We'd blow in place. So carry little charges and we'd blow it in place.
Okay.
So we did that a lot, and then did a lot of like village interactions. So we met with elders and stuff, and they'd bring us in and sit us down, and we'd have food with our interpreter. And it made me a lot more thankful for what I do have. Like to this day, like that is one of those things that's like forever has changed me and made me so grateful for all the opportunities and things I get in my life. Came back in 2014 and just Marined, right? Did a lot of training, a lot of schools, became a marksmanship instructor, which was my like end all be all goal in the Marine Corps. Like I love shooting. I love teaching, and I really love teaching. And it's funny because when I first started, you got to teach these classes, and you got to go through a school where you teach these classes to everybody else that's trying to be an instructor. And I was so scared of public speaking. Yeah. Like you'd get me in front of them, I'd be like, today we're gonna, just stuttering along. By the end of the 2 weeks of class, because you're teaching a class every day, so like they normalize it so much for you. Like I could get up there and just spitball a class, no issues at all. Loved it, and fell in love with that. And then that was 2015, late 2014, early 2015. I started instructing. Was doing that. Had procured some orders for basically my dream assignment for the Marine Corps, and was getting ready to re-enlist. And that's when, if everyone remembers 2016 for the Marine Corps, that's when Barack Obama, when he was president, decided, we don't need 200,000 Marines anymore. We only need 170,000. Mm-hmm. Well, the way the Marine Corps works when you're re-enlisting is you have to wait until you're 6 months from getting out, or until your contract's up, before you can re-enlist.
Okay.
And the year resets for how many numbers they're going to get every October. Well, guess when my ETS date, or my day I was getting out, was? September. So I had to wait till, what was it, March or April? Well, by then, all that stuff had gotten pushed out by Obama, so everybody started freaking out because they're like, oh, I can't wait. I got to make my decision now. So I go in to the NCO that's in charge of helping you re-enlist, and I sitting there like, yeah, I want to re-enlist. I already have these orders in place to go to Parris Island to be it's called PMI, primary marksmanship instructor. So like all the new guys, all the recruits going through boot camp, you get assigned to PMI, and they're in charge for teaching everyone in that platoon. Like this is their first time they're going to touch, an M4, M16. And
okay.
I was like, this is my chance to give back. Cause like, I had no intentions of ever being a drill instructor or a recruiter. I just didn't see myself wanting to do it. But I was like, this is the way I can do something outside of my career, but still in a path that I love, that's looked upon very highly. Cause there's only 10 PMIs at Parris Island and 10 at San Diego. So there's only 20 Marines out of 170,000 that, get to wear that title at any given time. And I had orders for it, and I was like, oh yes.
Yeah.
And then, so he was like, all right, let me see what I can do. Come back a couple days later. He's like, hey, we thank you for your service. You're going to get out on this date.
Really?
Here's a handshake. Thanks for everything you've done for us. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, so there's no spaces left to re-enlist. I was like, well, what if I change my job? Because I loved the Marine Corps at that time. Like, I wanted to stay in. At that point, I knew this was like kind of my life calling for a job, was like, I'm supposed to be in the military. Like, this is what I'm born to do. And he's like, man, there's nothing open. He's like, the only way possibly for you to stay in was to go to MARSOC selection, so Marine Special Operations Command, to go through their screening and selection process and get selected.
To go in and be like a recon Marine or something
well,
like
to
that?
be the Marine Raiders.
Okay.
Yep. So that was before they changed it officially to Raider Battalion and started calling them Raiders again.
So that would be a pretty big contrast to what you had been doing then.
Right. Like, I had been doing, some combat-oriented things with my MOS, but I wasn't, that front line going out. Like, my mission is, whatever, because they're special forces,
right?
MOS for the Marine Corps. That's their version of, Green Berets or Navy SEALs. That's theirs. That's their version of that. And I was like, I didn't have a desire or like that drive to want to do that. So I was like, I'm not going to lie to myself and say that I could do it. I probably could have. But I didn't feel the calling for it. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. And so I, did my thing, got out, and was, living life for about 30 days after I got out. And
this is in California still?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got out, and I was actually married at the time, and moved to 29 Palms, California. And if anyone knows where that is, that's the high desert, and it is not a great place. There's nothing out there. And my wife at the time was going to cosmetology school to get her license to do all that stuff. And she was like a month from graduating. So I was like, yeah, I'll just, because I'd just been driving there every weekend, because I was like, there's no point to move you to Pendleton, pay a lot more money and all that. It didn't make sense. I was like, I only got 6 months left when we got married. So I moved there, and, I was doing the thing, being a husband, stay-at-home husband, and wasn't bringing in any money. And I was just like, there's an emptiness in my life.
Yeah.
I was like, there's such an emptiness. I was like, I wonder if I can backdoor this whole process, go to the Marine recruiter as a prior service Marine, and just right back in, it's a new contract, not a re-enlistment.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe I can get away with this. Went and talked to the Marine recruiters. They're like, hey man, like, you know how it is right now. We can't. I was like, oh, okay. And
That's
I was
so
like,
crazy to me that they were turning down experienced people to protect our country.
I mean, but they were still enlisting.
They were
new recruits.
I was like,
there, right?
yeah. And I was like, well, so how is putting me back in a worse decision?
Yeah.
Like, you already know your return on investment with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I get the whole thing about not wanting to go, to essentially special forces. So my cousin went through Navy SEAL school, and I mean, he was almost done. He'd gone, I think he had gone through, Hell Week.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And then a group of SEALs came in and talked to him, and like, had a real, like, come to Jesus meeting with him. Like, this is what this is really going to be like.
Yeah.
This is what your orders are going to look like. You're not going to be taking orders from somebody in uniform. This is a different world. And, he called his dad, and was like, Dad, I don't know how the conversation went. I've been told some parts about it, but I didn't have the conversation with him, so I don't want to put words in his mouth or say whatever. The short story is he rang the bell. He got out. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know what? I can't see myself doing this, because he realized it was going to be something that was very different.
Right.
So at the time, let me try to get this right. I think the insertion team was handled by the Army for SEALs, and the Navy created their own insertion team.
I'm pretty sure that's how it went. Well, so at least with my knowledge is that you had special forces like Green Berets in the Army, and that had existed longer, and their kind of point was to go in and teach local militias and stuff like that.
Okay.
Kind of like they did in Vietnam. You had the MACV SOG guys.
Right.
And now, spoiler alert, I'm in the Army now. So
right, there you go.
I know I've done a little reading, because like in the Marine Corps history, the history of the Marine Corps is such an important part that's indoctrinated into you. And I've seen that doesn't really exist in the Army unless you go out and find it yourself. It's not beat into your soul.
Well, the Marines, the few, the proud, right?
Yeah, and you
got to know what you're proud of.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's all the history. So I know with the MACV SAW guys that was the precursor to Green Berets, essentially.
Okay,
like, that's what they were called before. They were kind of a off the books unit that was doing some stuff in Cambodia and stuff like that to try to start coups to overthrow the communist regimes and all that. And I think the Navy kind of got jealous, and they were like, well, we want to have our own super cool people. And they're like, well, we specialize in the water.
So they started with the
started with the UDT SEALs, the underwater demolition teams. And that's kind of where it started, was the whole like, all right, go out, the black suits that everybody's seen. If you've watched the commercials, you see them come out of the water and they're all super crazy with and everything. And I think it kind of just evolved from that and like into like underwater demolitions. So taking care of, the limpid mines that they'd put out in the water for the boats and everything, and like getting rid of that, or like going in and placing charges on boats for people we didn't like, and making sure those boats became coral reefs. Yeah. So I think that's kind of where those subsets started. And then I know when you get into like, we call them the tier 1 units. So, your Delta guys, and like your SEAL Team 6, that's like, those were started. So like Delta was supposed to be specifically for
Chuck Norris, right?
Yeah, exactly. Chuck Norris, always for Chuck Norris. No, but they were supposed to start specifically for like, was it airplane interdiction? So like, if a terrorist took over a plane, like they were the ones like hostage rescue and stuff like that. And then SEAL Team 6 had a completely different thing. And then the global war on terror changed a lot of that, but I think that was the original of what it was supposed to be. As far as my knowledge with it goes, I mean, I'm not super versed. I'm sure there's people that can tell you a heck of a lot more than I could.
Yeah, I don't know the whole story. I know that he's involved in doing some of that, but he's not on an actual SEAL team, because it just became something. He realized it was going to be more than what he wanted to do.
Right.
So I totally get that.
Yeah, I was just kind of did not want to get out over my skis on that one back in the day. Because, I mean, even then I look back on that, and I was 2015, 26, early 2016, and I'm like, man, I am not anywhere.
So you're like 22 years old at this point. 23,
23, I think. Yeah, I would have been 23 or
so
23.
You couldn't get back in the Marines.
Nope. So I was like, what's the next best thing?
So you drive a wedge into the Army.
Well, actually, so first off, I didn't go to the Army first.
Okay. Coast Guard?
I went to the Navy.
Okay.
And I was like, what's the next best thing to being in the Marine Corps? Being a corpsman in the Navy who gets attached to Marines. You wear the same uniform. You act the same. You talk the same. I know the lingo. I know the guys.
Right.
I loved medical stuff. So I was like, oh, this seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah. Might wind up on a carrier or something. Yeah.
Going to the Navy. I'm like, I want to be a corpsman. They're like, okay, sure. They're like, let's start doing your paperwork and stuff. I'm like, I got my DD-214. They're like, your prior service? I was like, yep. And they're like, you can go on a sub.
Oh.
And I was like, no, I'm not going on a metal tube.
So I had
and
a
not seeing
customer.
the sun. I love the sun way too much. I
Yeah.
love being outside and being in the sun. So I was like, that's not happening.
I've got a customer that he was on a sub. He's retired now, older gentleman. He was telling me a story one day, and I'm going to get this wrong. This has been several years ago. He was telling me about how many days they were under one time. And I was shocked. I mean, it was,
They'll go like 6 months without seeing the sun.
he told me how many days it was. And I was like, wait. Are you sure? He said, man, he said, you have no idea.
Are you sure?
and cause I thought he was like, like I said, he was an older gentleman. I was like, maybe he just forgot or something.
Right.
And
Got a little mixed up.
And then he started telling me, he wasn't sharing things he shouldn't share, but he was telling me, and obviously I've forgotten about it now, but he was telling me details about it, about what they would do, how much food they would have and all this kind of stuff. And what I wanted to ask was, well, what the heck were you doing? Why did you have to be under the water for that long?
Yeah.
Doing that. And it was, I didn't ask that question. I just I wanted to so bad. I wanted to know what he was doing, where they were in the world,
Right.
why they were having to do this or whatever. But let me tell you, that takes a different breed.
It does.
Person
It does. 100%.
to be able to do that.
Yep. So after the Navy was like that, I was like, all right, cool. Army's right next door. Went right next door. And they're like, prior service? I was like, yep. They're like, all right, cool. We can fast track this. You want to go to MEPS next week? Which is the Military Entry Processing Center. So it's where everyone goes when they're going to join to swear in for the first time ever. I'm like, sure. They're like, all right, 5 a.m. next week. Give me these papers. They scan them in. They're like, you're good.
Good grief.
Because I still had a clearance. I still had a security clearance and everything. I was still, I still had an active clearance because they're good for 10 years. So I was like,
But you're still like only a few months.
I'm literally 2 months from having got out.
Okay. All right.
And I was like, all right, cool. I'll go to MEPS. No big deal. I go in there. I get to bypass doing all the normal people stuff. Like for people that have never joined, I drove myself there and I just sit in the chair and I just wait and they call me back. And it's a civilian that sits there and they like help you pick your duty station off what's available based off your MOS and stuff like that. And I was, I didn't want to go to a school for an MOS. And I had some certifications from before I was ever in the military for like mechanic stuff. So I was like, go be a mechanic. I love working on, I love working on cars and trucks and all kinds of stuff. Like I just like tinkering and I'm pretty good at it. Like that's one of those things. It's like, I'm pretty good at figuring it out real quick. And so they're like, yeah, if you go be a mechanic, you don't have to go to school. We'll send you straight to, your first duty station for the Army. I was like, sold.
Let's go. Yeah.
All right. What do you got for me? I'm sitting back there and it's an older gentleman. He's like, I got Korea, I got Germany, and I got, one of the bases in Alaska, whichever, there's 2 Army bases. It's not the good one. I know that. It's not the one in Anchorage because my dad's best friend was stationed there for 13 years in Anchorage. And he's like, you don't want to go to the other one.
Okay.
It's like the frozen tundra up there.
Yeah, pretty well. Anchorage is like a frozen tundra to me.
Yeah, to
South
me too.
Georgia, okay,
Yeah.
so.
I don't like cold. Like I'm from Nebraska and I do not like cold.
Yeah.
It gets below 50. I'm like, nope, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it might be 50 below up there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I can't even imagine.
I was like,
that.
and they were like, yeah, well, you have to sign for one of them. I was like, actually, fun fact, I've done this before. I know your games. I don't actually have to do anything. And they're like, well, you can't just walk out. I was like, watch me. So I just walked out, just left MEPS, got my car, and MEPS was in LA. So from LA to 29 Palms, without traffic is a 3.5 hour drive. With traffic, which there is always traffic in LA,
14-hour
is
drive?
5.5, 6. So I left at like midnight the night before to be there at 5 a.m. So, I'm tired. I'm crabby. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten anything. I'm driving home, stopping, got Carl's Jr. or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Health food.
Yeah, health food.
Yeah.
I was real healthy at the time.
Right, yeah.
But I'm driving home, and the sergeant major for that whole recruiting area for like all of Southern California calls me. He's like, hey, brother, what happened? I was like, you all gave me options that are not going to work. I was like, I have a wife. It's November at this time. I was like, I'm not. Like, I drive a freaking Acura coupe, like sports car. I was like, I'm not driving to Anchorage, or not even Anchorage, but I'm not driving to Alaska in that. I'm not moving to Alaska. I was like, and I'm not going overseas as a first assignment. It's not happening. He's like, what if you come back tomorrow? I can promise you I got better things for you. I was like, I'll come back tomorrow. However, if you don't have anything different, I'm walking out again. Like, I'm not gonna put myself through that stress in life at this point. Cause like, I know well enough and good enough that those things change every day.
Yeah.
And there's always spaces. Like anywhere that ever tells you like, oh, we don't have any more room for any more of that MLS. They're probably, unless you're like one of those super specialized sneaky squirrel jobs, there's always room.
Sneaky squirrel.
And I learned it being a mechanic in the Army is that there is always room. Like that they could be like, oh yeah, you have every, 25 people you're supposed to have. No, they don't. They have 9.
Yeah.
They have 9 and somehow they say we have 25. Don't know how it works, but it always works out that way.
Okay.
So I go back the next day and they're like, all right, so we have Korea. We have that same place in Alaska. And they're like, and we have Fort Stewart, Georgia. It's like, well, I didn't know anything about the Army. I just knew that they say different things and they do things a little different. But other than that, it's kind of the same. But I was like, where in Georgia is that? Because I knew Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I was born, actually.
Yeah, I feel like anybody that knows the military knows, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, Camp Pendleton, maybe. And that's about the extent.
If they're a chopper guy, they know Rucker and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, they're like, oh, it's over by Savannah, Georgia, by the coast. I was like, sounds pretty nice. Take it. And they're like, what? I was like, I'll take it. Are you sure? I'm like, yep, I'll take it.
So once you take that, then it's official. You're in the Army.
I signed they put me on it's on a reservation, I guess you could call it. It's like a confirmation email for a hotel.
I've had many try to put me on a reservation before.
Yeah. And then so I did that. And then you walk next door and you swear in.
Okay.
Now I'm officially in the Army. Get my orders, my official orders. Like, you got 10 days from tomorrow to say hello at Fort Stewart.
Okay.
And I knew I was joining, so spent the next 2 days packing everything up, everything I own, driving across the country. Took 3 days or 2 days, whatever it was. Stopped in Nebraska because it was along the way. Saw my family. Drove the next 3 days. Made it down here, and signed into Fort Stewart. And they're like, "Where's your uniform?" Like, I showed up in jeans, and I think it was November, so I was like, jeans and a hoodie. It's like, don't have any. Like, what do you mean you don't have any? It's like, here's my orders. Like, okay, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to basic training? I was like, I didn't. And it's really common now. Like, there is a lot of prior service Marines running around the Army. Like, it is kind of crazy. The running joke is we're all joining the Army to fix it now.
So, there we go. So what you're saying is college sports is not the only thing that has a transfer portal that's getting out of control.
Yeah, it's actually, that's the perfect analogy for it.
There you go.
Now that you say that, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that is definitely how it's been. And so I'm like one of the first. Like, there was no other prior service Marines in my unit when I got there.
Okay.
So it took them doing a whole bunch of research, making a whole bunch of phone calls to figure out how to even get me uniforms. Finally get this paper. I got to go take it, get uniforms, get all the stuff. Cool. Mind you, I don't know the way Army does anything. So I show up to my unit. The next day I got to do PT because you do, physical training every morning. So I'm walking in PTs in, see my officer. I'm like, hey, it's morning, sir. He's like, are you going to salute me? I was like, I'm in PTs. I do not salute. Because in the Marine Corps, you don't. If you're not wearing, your cover on your head, you don't salute. Well, in the Army, that's not a thing. You just salute all the time. Okay. It's almost like a better safe than sorry. So now I have to start learning Army isms. And
you got to start being able to recognize people's faces and stuff.
Right.
And you're not just going off of how they're dressed.
Yep.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this is going to be a culture shock. And it was. Like, those first 6 months were hard. They were real hard. I had a hard time kind of letting the Marine Corps go, in a sense, as far as like, a lot of conversations those first 6 months I started with, well, in the Marine Corps we did this, or, back in the Marine Corps. And then I had to like I kind of slowly came to the realization of like, hey, we are not in Kansas anymore. We are not in the Marine Corps.
Not in the Marines
like,
anymore.
I can't, I can't click my heels 3 times and end up back where I came from. But I can't make the most of what I got now. So then I started embracing the Army because I fought it. I fought the culture change so hard.
But there was no way back. Like you,
there wasn't. There was not a way back. Believe me, I explored every option I could think of.
I was seeing the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I saw your eyes jumping.
The gears in my head were turning.
Yep,
and they were just spinning smoke at that point. So I finally embraced it, and like I guess I probably should have prefaced by saying this. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a sergeant. I was an E5. The only way for me to come into the Army was to take a hit on rank and be an E4, so a specialist. They wouldn't even give me corporal stripes as an NCO. I'm like, look, I've spent 2.5, almost 3 years as an NCO. Like I've been a platoon sergeant. Like I've led 50 dudes.
None of that really mattered.
They're like, don't care.
Wow.
So I had NCOs when I first got in the Army, and maybe this is why it rubbed me wrong, but I had NCOs that had been in like 3 years total. I'd been in more years than them.
Yeah.
They hadn't really done much. They would go to teach classes to us. I'm like, no, you're wrong. That is not how you would do any of that. Because they would talk about like patrolling operations or like convoy etiquette when you're on deployment. And they're like, yeah, if we get shot at from this direction, we're going to do this. I'm like, no, you would not. No, like I would. The running joke is all of us in the military have a little bit of autism, and there's nothing wrong with autism. Like, we hyper focus on something. Mine was like that stuff. Like I was big on like the plan A, the plan B, knowing all those things. And I was like, no, you would never do any of this. And I would like lose my mind over what they're telling me. They're like, well, this is what it says in the book. I'm like, book's wrong.
Yeah.
Book's wrong. Don't listen to the book. Stop listening to the book. As long as you're not,
So what you're saying is you had some people leading you that had never been there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing to work in theory. It's another thing what works in the field.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing. They were very theory.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a lot of practical application.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say this somehow without incriminating anyone. I have 2 friends that are going through like a Bible study right now. All right. 2 girls are going through this Bible study right now. And part of what they're talking about is forgiveness.
Okay.
So you get into a situation with somebody where there's a rift and you're trying to mend this. And, so this girl that's leading it is she's kind of, saying you go by the book. This is what you do. If you've done this and this didn't work, then you do this. And then you've done this and this doesn't work, then you do this. And then you will get to a point of restoration. And, the other girl she's talking with, she's like, I've done all that. And there's been no restoration. This person, I can't restore this relationship. I've tried to do everything possible to restore it. And she's like, well, no, you messed up on a step somewhere. It's like, listen, when you're dealing with people,
right?
Or like in your situation, when you're dealing with a combat situation, it's going to be different.
Yeah. It's a fluid.
Yeah.
It's a fluid dynamic.
And so she's looking at what Paul said about getting restoration. And I think it's important to say, to look at that Paul also said, as much as it depends on you.
Yeah. I mean, it takes 2.
It takes 2
for restoration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So, and that'll be one of those areas where somebody would say, well, the Bible contradicts itself. No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't contradict itself. I invite anybody that ever feels like there's a contradiction in the Bible, come find me and show it to me, and we'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm of the belief that it doesn't exist. It doesn't. Let me make sure I enunciate really good on that. It does not exist. That there. I believe that Scripture, that the Bible is the inerrant Word of God, and there are no mistakes, and that everything that needed to be communicated to us was communicated to us. Now, how we learn to apply it to our lives is where the breakdown happens, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like in this situation with this guy that had never been in combat situations like you, he was just going off of what the book said.
Right.
Which unfortunately, was going to wind up getting some people hurt, if not killed, right?
Yeah.
If they got into that situation.
You think a lot of those books, they didn't update the whole time during the global war on terror, because they weren't going back and asking, the the squads that went out there, like, hey, how did you guys actually do this versus how we tell you to do it?
Yeah, it's
like,
almost
how did you handle this situation? And
when-
it's like, they're 10 years outdated.
Yeah, when I was in construction, you get a lot of young architects who are out of school, and in theory, the drawings work, but when you try to put it in place, it doesn't. And it would have been helpful for contractors, architects to work together on design with what actually works. But there's almost a lot of times it seemed like there was a rift between.
There's almost a firewall between those two.
Yeah.
Oh, there is.
Right?
So
Sure.
that we draw it, you do it this way.
Yep.
And there's not much give and take. Whereas, like what you said, if you go talk to the people who are on the ground, you could write a much better book.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, and you know, you go into the Army and you're going to be a mechanic. Who does a mechanic hate the most?
An engineer.
An engineer.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I was thinking when you were
Because
talking
they
about
put-
the architect.
because they put
I was like,
screws in
theory
places?
Theory is everything.
Yeah.
And then practical application is a completely
Right.
different one.
Absolutely.
Common sense is not existent in the engineer world either.
Yeah.
You know, you'll go to take something apart and there's a screw somewhere that once the engine is in the box, you cannot get to it. You can't get to this bolt, right? You're literally taking a flat piece of bar and you're welding a socket onto the end of it so you could try to get to it.
Yeah.
So
I've never worked on a tank, but the most frustrated I think I've ever been putting something together was a rocking horse. Christmas Eve, I think I punched a rocking horse in the face. I'm like, who would design it this way?
Yeah, I eventually
Whoever designed this has never put it together.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's funny, man.
eventually I ended up having a kid. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids furniture,
Yes.
same thing. I have never been so angry in my life.
Or anything from IKEA.
Like, you ever get to that point where you get like so frustrated and angry, you just start, like, it could be 65 degrees in your house, you start sweating and you're
pouring
just like
sweat.
hot and you're
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah.
That's the point where my wife just walks out of the room.
Yeah. Kids, it's better if we just went, let's go outside and throw the football or something.
Yep.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so, all right, so where were we?
Anyway, yeah. So
Army, had some riffs. Finally got it figured out, and they sent me to our like first aid combat lifesaver course for the Army. 'Cause it's like I've done a bunch of medical training from when I was in the Marine Corps, but I got to get certified on the Army.
Well, I mean, people in the Army are different than people in the Marines.
There is.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
so
100%.
there's different veins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to learn how to do the Army way.
Which my best friend in the Marine Corps was our Navy corpsman.
Okay.
You know, me and Tommy, we were inseparable, and like that guy eats, sleeps, and breathes medicine while he was in.
Okay. All right.
He got out. He's a cop down in Fort Worth. Well, he was in Fort Worth. He's in Corsicana, Texas now.
Okay. Got it.
But yeah, like me and him are still super close. But yeah, that was the guy that taught me my medical life. Like, I learned all the medical ins and outs from him, little tips and tricks for plugging holes and stuff like that. But so I'm doing the Army one, and there's a guy from my unit. Kind of, you hear him talk, and you'd be like, oh yeah, he's definitely like from the deep South.
Yeah.
Named Stu, and you know, find out he's really big into hog hunting. And I've done a little bit of hunting in my life at this point, a little bit, but I only ever used rifles. Like, I'd shot, you know, bow and arrows in PE class back in the day, and I loved it. Loved archery, but like, I hadn't had a lot of experience, especially with compound bows. I'd shot some, you know, the recurves that every school had that are beat to heck. And I was like, you hog hunt a bunch? And we're just sitting there BS. And he's like, yep. And I was like, what do you use? Because like, I had always heard, you know, hog hunting or seen the videos of people hog hunting, you know, going out shooting 20, 30, 40 hogs and stuff like that. And I'm just like, that looks so fun. I was like, and I bet it tastes good. Because like, I love pork. So I was like,
Yeah.
I bet you this is a great time. And he's like, I use a bow. I was like, what do you mean you use a bow? Fast forward, I find out he's actually selling his bow because he had just got a new one. And John, I'm sure you can tell me what year, but it was a PSE Vendetta.
Oh wow.
So it's 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, something
I
like
think
that.
somewhere around there.
20, maybe 12.
Yeah. So
maybe
it was the
12.
Vendetta XS. So it's a 28-inch axle-to-axle rider short bow. Loved it.
I think they made that bow for several years. PSE usually does. They
Yeah, they've run them for a few
Usually
years.
ride
And
them
then
for a few
I've learned
years.
that. I've learned that. So that was my first bow. And the first time I ever drew it back, I derailed it
Uh-oh.
because I didn't know anything. I'm gripping it as tight as you can grip something, and first time ever using a release.
Yeah.
So I'm like just yanking on it, turning it in my hands. It's getting all cockeyed, and all of a sudden it derails and huge sound. And I'm like, oh no. And I just look at, because Stu's there with me. I'm like, did I break it? He's like, it's not broke, but you're going to have to get the string put on. I'm like, all right, well, where do I go? He's like, there's only one archery shop around here. And I was like, where's that? And he goes, up by Savannah, and that shop, and went there. They were not the greatest interaction for somebody that's definitely very new to the sport and the culture and lifestyle of archery. I didn't ever go back there after that time. We'll just say that. But they fixed it. So here I am. And then Stu gives me a little lesson, and I start YouTubing videos on how to actually draw a bow the right way. Cause a YouTube degree is better than most degrees you're going to get nowadays.
Yeah. You can do anything.
That's what I like to say.
YouTube.
Like, anytime I'm going to work on a car, YouTube's sitting there. Yeah, whether or not I know what I'm doing, I just do it because maybe they have a quicker, easier way.
I think that's how Elon Musk built the space shuttle.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. There's probably like a 52-part series that he watched, and it explained it all. But yeah, so started doing that, went out hog hunting. I think my first 4 shots I took on a hog, because I was like the jitters of all jitters.
Yeah.
Whitetail fever had nothing on me in this point. And we were hog hunting at night, so we had lights mounted on our bows. So
which is legal in Georgia,
yes,
by the way.
Yes, it is. It is legal. And come to full draw, click that light on. You got 2 seconds.
Right. It's pretty quick.
Because they're going to either stand there and look at you for a second and then walk off, or they're just going to turn it and run.
Yeah.
So you click it on, they stand still, and you're like, oh, I got 2 seconds to make sure I have this pin lined up with this peep, everything go. And I missed the first 4 shots, and I was getting so defeated. And this was all in the first night. I was like, I'm so defeated. I'm not good at this archery thing at all. I thought I was going to be good at it because I'm good at shooting guns. So I was like, it can't be that different. It was very, very different.
Yeah.
And then we went out the next weekend. He's like, hey, man. And I felt bad because later on, we would just alternate shots on who got to shoot at a pig. So, we had 6-7 spots we'd always go to in the same night, because we'd go out from 11 p.m. to 4 or 5 in the morning when the hogs are out, when they're playing. So I shoot one, he shoots one. I shoot one, he shoots one. And that's how it got later on. But, back then he was like, hey, just keep shooting, man. And I was like, dude, I feel so bad. He's not getting any hogs. He's just standing here watching me miss. Finally, everything worked out. Shoot my first hog. And this thing just goes zipping. And I got a lit knock on the arrow.
Yeah.
And you just see this little red dot just disappearing off into the distance. And I'm like, I don't know where it went. And he goes, well, we'll just drive around until we find it.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds simple enough to me. And he had night vision, so that little knock is like a spotlight on the planet for everything right then. So he's like, got it. We walk up, dead hog. Okay. And I was like,
that's cool.
All right, now how do I clean it? Because I ain't never cleaned a hog before. I've cleaned deer, so I was like, can't be that different, but I also don't know. So he teaches me to do that, and then boom, that becomes our weekend routine.
Okay.
Cool. Almost every weekend, you want to find me, I was out shooting hogs. It became my obsession. I didn't even care about deer hunting for 3 years. All I want to do is shoot hogs. And I'm still the same way to this day. If I'm up in a tree stand and I hear hogs fighting and going after it, but I still got an hour of light left and I think a deer might come, I will get down and go find hogs.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just yeah, this will be fun. But yeah, so Stu and me became best friends and hunted for years. And
now you said he was definitely Southern by his accent. Where was he from?
He was from upstate Maine.
What?
Wow.
Yep.
That is crazy.
He had a thicker accent than your cousin's grandma from southeastern Arkansas.
Really?
I was just like,
I met a girl here in the shop 2 weeks ago, and she sounded like ultra country. And I said, where are you from? She said, New York. I was like, wait a second. There's no way.
Oh, yeah, upstate New York.
Yeah.
One of my really good friends from the Army, he's a welder now, and he moved back home upstate New York, and he's the same way. He's got some twang in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
it's hilarious.
What in the world? I was like, you're from Maine? It's like, people are from there? Because I had never met anybody from Maine. And I was like, I didn't even know that place was actually real.
I just thought it.
He's like, yeah, man, we could go up there and hunt one year. I'm like,
Imaginary.
is it cold there? He goes, yeah. I was like, nah, I'll stay here. I was like, you can go up there and shoot moose and bear and the deer they have up there. I'm like, I'll stay down here where it's nice and warm.
Funny.
Moose is delicious.
I have not had moose
It
before.
is so good. I've got another customer that he went on a hunt up there, and apparently they grow a lot of broccoli in Maine.
Yep.
And so the moose was in the broccoli field, but they had to wait for it to get out of the field before they could shoot it.
Huh.
And anyway, he gave me some steaks off of it, some big cuts. And man, it was so good. It was the reddest meat I've ever cooked.
Have you, it's like a side note, have you seen the thing about like the moose population in North America is declining at like an 80% rate?
No.
So they're getting, because of the like last 5 years with the winters being so warm, it's not killing off the tick population.
Really?
Yeah, because usually, you get that good winter freeze up, especially up north where and it kills off that tick population, so it's not that bad. But like hunters are shooting moose and they're literally like their whole skin is crawling with ticks. Like it looks like they're moving,
Well,
and
it shouldn't be that way after this year.
Yeah, they're getting poisoned, and it's killed off a lot of the population. Steve Ranella was just talking about it. Is like that's like a thing we need to be paying a lot of attention to right now. I like him because he's just so about conservation.
Right.
So I was like, I like to listen to what because I mean he's out there a lot more than any of us are going to be. Like that's his life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was a fun little side note. But yeah, so worked as a mechanic. Was doing that, loving it. Got promoted finally. Was back to being a sergeant. I was like, all right, cool. Now I'm a big boss again. And that was right as I was getting ready to leave here. And the girl I'd been dating at the time, she ended up pregnant and had my little son, my son Grayson. And that was 3 months before I moved to Fort Campbell.
Kentucky?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Right there on the Kentucky-Tennessee line. Yeah. I lived on the Tennessee side because if you've ever been around Fort Campbell, the Kentucky side right there is not the nicest.
So you were like Clarksville then?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
cool.
I was in Clarksville. I loved Clarksville.
Yeah, Clarksville's a cool town. It's small.
It's gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And it's really nice.
And there a college there?
Yeah, Austin P.
Austin P. There you go.
Yep, Austin P is there. Yeah, so I was like, all right, cool, going to Tennessee. This will be fun. I'm going to do some whitetail hunting up there. So find a bow shop.
So what kind of stuff were you working on?
So I was a wheeled vehicle mechanic. So
Okay.
like I worked on the Humvees, the bigger trucks and stuff like that. But like I was in an artillery unit. So we had the Paladins, the big tracked. It looks like a tank, but it's not a tank. It's a self-propelled artillery. So instead of you having to tow it around and set it all up, it looks like a tank, but it's a artillery piece gun.
Okay.
So like I worked on those because I kind of like the running joke for me and a couple of the guys there is like a 91 Bravo, which is a wheeled vehicle mechanic, is a 91 everything. Like we're the ones that can work. We're not specialized. We can pretty much work on anything.
Yeah.
It's got, an engine. We'll figure it out. So I worked on a little bit of everything. I never touched like Abrams or stuff like that, like the main battle tanks, but like Bradleys, Paladins, anything with wheels I touched. Like I liked tinkering.
So those things have diesel engines or jet engines, or what are they?
Everything has a diesel engine, and then the M1 Abrams has a diesel turbine, so it's basically sounds like a jet. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Those things are insane. But yeah, so did that. Moved to Tennessee to be a mechanic up there. That was my next duty assignment. And my son's mother ended up deploying a couple months after we got there, and this was 2019. Well, what happened early 2020? The world decided we don't want to go outside anymore.
Yeah.
And we all know how that went. But so I'm a single dad.
Well, we all decided we don't want to be around each other anymore.
Yeah, that's
or at least
yeah.
we were told that's
Yeah,
what
we were
need to
told
do.
we're not supposed to hang out with each other anymore.
Yeah,
You're not allowed to have friends. But I'm, a single dad to a 9-month-old. My kid's mom just went to Afghanistan. And now I can't leave my house, or so you say. So a month goes by, and then they're like, all right, yeah, we're going to go back to work. It's like, okay, cool. Well, guess what? My son went to daycare on base.
Yeah.
Guess what wasn't open still? The daycares.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get stagnant at work because I kind of realized the career progression for a mechanic, once you're an NCO, sucks. Like now you're just you're a manager. You don't get to work on stuff anymore. You actually get yelled at half the time when you work on stuff. So I was like, I don't enjoy the Army anymore. Like I didn't enjoy my job because I was just doing dumb stuff. I was literally just doing paperwork or like standing over someone's shoulder telling them to work faster, essentially. But like in my head, I'm like, I want to turn wrenches with you and help you and teach you. But they didn't want me turning wrenches. They wanted me explaining why it's not done yet to, people in charge. I'm like, this is dumb. And then they're like, hey, you need to come to work. I'm like, that's cool. I would. However, I'm staying home with my son. They're like, no, you're going to come to work. I was like, okay, well, my son goes to daycare on base. It's not open. They're like, well, you got to figure something out. I was like, all right. So I figured, it'll open in a couple weeks. I hit up my son's mother. Her mom and dad live in Pennsylvania, up by Pittsburgh, just north of Pittsburgh. And so I was like, hey, could you guys help me out? Take Grayson for a couple months or a couple weeks. And then I'll get him back once daycare opens. So like, of course, they're amazing and they were wanting to help. So I was like, great. So get him up there on a weekend, get him settled in. He's okay. He's doing great. He's not even a year yet, so he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Like, he don't have that wherewithal yet. And then the daycare's open back up. And I'm like, hey, I want to, take leave this weekend or take vacation time, and I want to go get my son. They're like, yeah, fun fact, COVID, you can only go 50 miles from your house. I was like, yeah, I get that. That's for fun, right? Like, I'm going to get my kid. They're like, no. I was like, okay, so what happens if I go get my kid? They're like, you're going to get kicked out.
What?
For disobeying a lawful order. I was like, you're telling me you're going to kick me out of the military for getting my kid? And at this point, like, I'm over life. Like, I don't care. Like, you guys want to see belligerent? Like, welcome to me being belligerent. I'm going to show up and do the bare minimum, and I'm going to have an attitude about it the whole time. And I'm not going to be someone that's fun to work with. And that's basically what became of it. And I just did that. And I was like, I want to stay in the Army, but I cannot do this job anymore in this kind of a unit. Can't. It's like, I need to go back to doing something, even if it doesn't have transferable skills. I got to do something fun that I enjoy. I was like, what do I enjoy? I was like, I like watching stuff go boom. I like being out on, with the infantry and doing stuff like that. All right. So let's start narrowing it down. Went through the list, narrowed it down, and I ended up focusing in on forward observer. So basically, I'm out there with the infantry, and then when stuff goes south, or before stuff would go south, I'm the guy calling up to our mortar teams, to our artillery support, or to helicopters or attack helicopters, and I'm getting ammunition put on people. I'm the magic eraser on the battlefield, essentially. So okay. I make buildings and things that are there disappear. It's a fun job. I actually love that job. So I went to school for that in Fort Sill, and that was my new job. And then, so I was doing that, and then Russia, Ukraine happened, and our unit at Fort Campbell was like, they were like, hey, Russia, Ukraine just took off. 2 months, we're going to be there. We're going to be, the first ones in. I was like, all right. War is back on the menu today. I was like, I'm all about it. And so it gets closer and gets closer, and you start seeing the writing on the wall is that, the U.S. is not going to get involved as far as personnel. And I was like, oh, I've seen this story before. I know how this works. And so we go, and we're in Poland. And I mean, you ever seen those little airfields, little airports where you'll get crop dusters and stuff take off from?
Yeah.
People got their little Kodiak planes.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you imagine building 100-man tents about 50 meters from that runway, that's where we lived in Poland for 9 months. We didn't have a gym on base. We kind of had a cafeteria, I guess you could say. It was a cafeteria, but we weren't getting real food. It was like they heated it up in water and gave it to us, like warmed it up. So it wasn't like real meals. But we were allowed to leave base every day. It's
Everybody
like,
loves boiled meat.
yeah, that's basically what it was. Boiled meat, boiled eggs, powdered eggs that you add water to. Gross. But we were allowed to leave base every day at the end of the workday. So it was essentially like being at Fort Campbell in Poland. Like there was, like, I knew it was kind of, I hate saying it this way, it was a joke.
Y'all were there just kind of.
We were wasting time. Yeah. We were wasting time. Like, truthfully, we didn't do any training for 9 months.
What?
Yeah, because we were the first ones over there. So nobody had, like, the connections that in the coming years they have now. That, like, when they send, like, my old unit is about to go back to Europe in March. But they actually have a training plan in place.
So y'all were just over there kind of hanging out,
sitting
doing
on our
PT
thumbs.
every day.
Sitting on our
that
thumbs.
was
Oh,
it.
we could only do PT for, like, the first 3 months we were there. We got there in June, and we could only do PT till, like, September. And then there was snow on the ground and ice. Like, we couldn't physically, safely do. You couldn't go for a 2-mile run.
So what you're telling me is we had a battalion or group of,
It was a battalion, yeah.
okay, over there that essentially sat there for months and got pretty much from battle ready to not being battle ready.
We went from battle ready to the most, like, lackadaisical unit. They were letting us take, like, 4-day weekends, and you could go anywhere you wanted in Europe. Which,
oh my gosh,
it was,
man, what
don't get me wrong,
disaster.
don't get me wrong, was really cool. Like, it was a great experience.
Yeah, of course it was.
Because, like, I went to Budapest, I went to Spain, I went to Italy. Like, I got to have some very awesome experiences. Now, 10 out of 10, I never want to go back to Europe. I just don't. I like the United States. Like, I'm a Midwest boy. I grew up in the Midwest. The furthest I'd ever been before I joined the military was Oklahoma. I used to go down to Oklahoma and watch car races and stuff all the time when I was in high school and college. And besides that, like, I never left Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'd never seen the ocean. Huh. First time I ever saw the ocean was when they made us run along the edge of it when I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps. So I was like, that's the ocean? That's what that looks like? It's like, huh, that's a lot of water. I was like, I'm used to lakes. But yeah, so wasted 9 months in Europe. And this is the part that'll make you sick. So we have the numbers. We got told the numbers, how much it costed to run that little outpost essentially that we were on per day. $1.4 million.
Per day?
Per day. And we were there 270 days.
Good
so
grief.
about $340 million.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, this is disgusting.
What do you think Elon would have said about that?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. But I'm like, everybody is upset about this. I'm like, I'm all for it. Like, let's get rid of all the wasting of money.
Listen, I get, I get that we needed to have a presence. We needed to be there in case.
Right. I get that too. But
I
it was
completely
like,
understand that, but it's like,
It's just thrown together. Like,
well,
that's
yeah,
not-
it was
Yeah.
like, let's throw some stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. Cause we had a whole brigade. So 6 battalions. There was 2.5 battalions in Romania, 2 battalions in Poland, which the battalion I was part of before that when I was doing reconnaissance stuff was they were the ones that, no joke, like when the U.S. was sending ammo to Ukraine, it went to this airport in Poland because it was like 50 kilometers from the Ukraine border.
right.
So that was like the furthest, most friendly area of NATO they could send it to. So like they were actually like security, making sure nobody messed with all that equipment and ammo and everything that was coming off those airplanes. So like they had a real job, but like we had no purpose. And it was like, it got very like, when we talk about winter depression, like with, like people say that's a real thing, is like or seasonal depression when it's cloudy. That's
Daylight for 7 hours a day.
Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Poland.
Yeah.
Like I love Poland. I love the people. Like the people were amazing. But man, if you weren't depressed, because you're like, I'm going to wake up at 9 a.m. I'm going to sit around and teach classes to my guys for a couple hours. I'm going to eat some crappy food. I'm going to take a nap for an hour. I'm going to teach a couple classes. I'm going to go to the gym. And we had to pay for a gym membership off base. Like, we were paying taxi cabs every day.
Had to cover that $1.3 million.
Well, because they didn't build a gym for us on base. And there was no way for us to work out. So we were like, I was like, I'm one of the people that, like, I love fitness. So I was like, I'm going to go to a gym. I will find one. And it was like $25 a month for a membership at this gym in the little town in Poland we were in, which was cool. Like, I didn't have a problem with paying that. But it's like, that was what I looked forward to every day. It was like, well, at least I'm not sitting on my behind for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's all I did for 9 months was work out and teach classes. Like, I was truthfully, like, it was a waste. Came back from there, and I was on orders back here to Fort Stewart. And so I came back here. I was working as an instructor for the non-commissioned officer academy out there for about 6 months, and it just wasn't jiving, I guess you could say. There's some things and didn't work out. And my old sergeant major from when I was at Fort Campbell was the division artillery sergeant major. And I was like, hey, I need a job. He's like, come work for me. I was like, deal. Because, I mean, he's the best guy I've ever worked for in my life. Like,
Wait. He was at Fort Campbell and now he's at Fort Stewart?
Yep.
Yeah, I know him. He's an awesome guy.
Sergeant Major Rudder?
He's a cool guy.
Yeah. He grew up in Ranger Regiment too.
Okay.
So he's a Fort Observer by trade.
Okay.
So, like, we all call him Dad.
Oh, man.
It's funny.
That's cool.
He is the epitome of everything you want to see in a leader. Like, I base so much of what I do on a daily basis off my interactions I've had with him for the last 3.5, 4 years now. He's incredible
That's
to work
awesome.
with. Yeah. Like, I think he's going back to Campbell possibly this summer. That's the rumor. If he does, when it comes time for me to get orders, like, I might just go back to Campbell.
Yeah.
Because I'll work with him again in a heartbeat. He has been the mentor and leader I needed.
Yeah. That's cool.
So 12 and a half years later, here I am. I moved back here and I was in the market for a new bow last year, right around Thanksgiving.
There you go.
And, watched all the MFJJ videos of him reviewing all the new bows as they came out. And I was like, all right, well, let's go shoot everything. And a mutual friend of ours told me to come out here.
Okay.
Yeah, and a mutual friend of ours told me to come out here, Tony.
Yeah.
And he's like, go check out Bow Treader.
Yeah.
I was like, where's that at? He goes,
all right, Brandon, we'll catch you.
Yeah, I got to get to a meeting, but I look forward to listening to the rest of the podcast.
There you go. There you go. All right. We'll catch
see
you
you,
next
Brandon.
time. Hey, the key should be in the door so you can get out.
Okay.
But yeah, so Tony's like, go check out Bow Treader in Statesboro, man. He's like, my buddy's the one that owns it. He's awesome shop. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Mind you, we go back in the past. I had a terrible experience at a different shop. So I was like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I'm glad I found this place. Came in here. It was packed. And, I don't remember who all was working here at the time, but all the bow techs were running around, monkeying, helping people fix stuff up. And it's the middle of hunting season. So you got all the fixes.
That time of year, it's pretty crazy.
You were helping people. Everyone was helping people. And finally, little old Bryce comes wandering by. And I was like, hey, man, this is my draw length. Looking to buy a new bow today.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, well, what are you trying to shoot? I don't know. Everything. And I feel bad now because I made him spend 2 hours sitting up every single bow.
No way, man. That's what we do.
And I was so on that train of I needed a longer axle bow, so I completely wasn't paying attention to any of the shorter bows that year. And so I was shooting all the 32s and longer. And I ended up selling it on a Lift 33 and put a deposit in because I found out y'all weren't going to be getting them for a little while. And
right, yeah. So this would have been like November
of 23. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And it was funny because, like, I'd call y'all, like, every 2 weeks. I'm like, hey, y'all got any lifts in yet? You got my lift in yet? You got my lift in yet?
Yeah, so that year, we had a wait list for lifts.
Right.
So by the end of February, maybe, we had gone through, like, let's see, that bow launched the second week in November.
Yeah, I think I was here like 2 weeks after it released.
Yep. So we had our demos, and we had started getting some bows. We got bows in December. Anyway, by this time, so this is, right around Valentine's Day right now. I don't know when this episode will drop, but it's the 13th of February. We had sold like 100 of those things. It was crazy.
Oh, they sold like hotcakes. They're a great bow.
It was crazy.
They're awesome.
Yeah. So, it did take Matthews a little bit to get ahead of that.
Well, I don't think they could have anticipated the number of bows.
It was insane. It truly was.
They were selling, they outsold all other bow companies combined 4-1 with just the lift.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
I don't think we'll ever see that again for like the next 10 or 15 years, but
yeah, I'll tell you, it was wild.
Insanity.
I started 2024 selling a lift. On the first day I was open in 2024, I sold a lift. The last day I was open of 2024, I sold a lift.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I texted my rep. I was like, well, I started the year and ended the year the same way. He was like, what do you mean? I said, I was selling a lift.
Nice.
That's how the year went. I mean, it was the year of the lift by a long shot. So, I mean, we just sold so many of them.
Oh, yeah. So I think it was the first week of March, maybe the second week of March.
Yeah.
I think Wes called me.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, man, your bow's here.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, shoot.
Let's go.
I'm pretty sure I talked to my boss at work that day, and I was like, hey, what do we have going on this afternoon? He's like, nothing. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to the bow shop. I got to pick up my new bow. Bye.
Yeah.
Came here. Y'all set it up for me. Got it paper tuned. And then from there, it was hit the ground running, and I started putting arrows through that thing. I was hooked.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, you think about it, my last bow was from roughly 2011.
Right.
So that jumping
was
change.
a huge. All right, I'm back.
All right. But yeah, so shot the heck out of that lift. I think I came in here like 2 months after I bought it, and I won't say anything bad, but I put a lot of arrows through it.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, man, I think you need some different strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you mean?
First set of strings out.
Yep. And you were like, let me build you a set of strings. And I was like, okay. I'm always willing to not have to pay the big name when I can give my business to a small business.
Sure.
I'd rather give it to a small business 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And you put those strings on there, and I was like, what in the world did you do to my bow? Like, it is night and day difference.
Yeah.
Like, I pretty sure that day I put 300 arrows through it. No stretch, no nothing. I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing in my life.
Yeah. So we have a string company, and we build primarily with bloodline fibers, and it is a different material.
Yeah. I mean, just alone the fact that I don't have to wax them ever.
Yeah.
Is so convenient. It's one less thing I can't forget.
Right. Yep. And it finishes at a smaller diameter, which you do pick up a little bit of speed. It's not significant. I mean, it's not like it's a huge difference.
No, I think I picked up 3 feet per second.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're going to, I'm not going to sit here and say, you're going to pick up 30 feet per second.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's
I picked up
like
2 or 3 feet. It was the amount of like how rock solid steady everything stayed.
Right. Yeah.
That was the part that helped me out and made me happy about it.
That's the biggest thing that I've noticed. What's up, Griffin? How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Yep.
Good.
All right. We got Griffin joining in the show here this morning. We're just talking about when he got his new lift last year. And so, Griffin, this is Nate.
What's going on?
This is the guy that got my bow from last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, so he's been kind of sharing his story with us and everything, but yeah, so we built out of that bloodline material, and it took some time to learn the material. I got to be really good friends with the guy that owns the company that makes it, and so we actually got to go through a couple iterations or a couple generations of the material with them as they were working to develop some new stuff. And I really feel like, where they're at with it right now is it's an awesome material. I mean, it's really, really good. And we did have to. So we used to build with BCY. That's like the industry standard.
Right.
If you're going to build a string, you're going to work with BCY, and they're a great company. I love the folks at BCY. I can call the owner at BCY right now. I've got his phone number. I can call him right now and get him on the phone. And so I think he's an awesome guy. But the material that Bloodline is using, the blend that they're using, and everything. You don't have inconsistencies in diameters from color to color.
No, not at all.
Right. So with the BCY material, we would notice inconsistencies. And to me, that's something that's really important, right? The diameter of the string,
like
the
just
finished
because
string is really important because to this extent. So like with a flow color, flow green, flow orange, flow yellow, something like that, it would wind up being thicker because the color is essentially on top of the string.
I say, did they have to like coat it differently?
Yeah. And so when you're building with one of those colors, you have to drop string count. And it's not, somebody's going to hear that and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to flow yellow string or something. It's not, you're not in any way having a subpar string.
Right, or even worrying about catastrophe.
Yeah,
happening.
or a string break in or something like that.
Because they're so overbuilt.
When you lay these bundles up, you could pick a car up with them with a bowstring.
Oh yeah,
it's insane. So anyway, we learned through the process that we had to change our formula a little bit going to this new material. We changed our process of stabilizing the bundle. So traditionally, you lay up a bundle. You lay up a string, you twist it, and then you put it under constant pressure. We have found that if we will cycle pressure on at that step of the build process, we get a much more stable finished string than if we were to do it otherwise.
So you're putting some pressure on it, letting it off, coming back with some pressure and stuff.
So we'll cycle that string, and we can cycle a string in about 22 minutes. What would have traditionally taken hours to stabilize a bundle, right?
That speeds up that process a whole bunch.
And people refer to it in the industry as pre-stretching the string or whatever. In reality, you're really not stretching anything. What you're doing is you're stabilizing the bundle. So you've got this bundle of strings that you've laid up. So when you lay it up, you've got just basically a continuous loop that you've put together, right? You've got this big circle. If you were to hold it out, you've got a big circle. So what you do is you twist that up. Well, if you think about twisting, just get a piece of yarn, get a piece of fishing line or something, and twist it up. And you pull on it, it's gonna become longer, right? Because you're getting that bundle to
tighter.
Yeah, it's all tightening down on itself
to get tighter together. So all you're doing is stabilizing the bundle. So it's taken us some time to learn through that. Dude, we built strings for 2 years before we ever went to market with them. I can't tell you how many strings I've built and just thrown them away because I didn't like it. No, this doesn't look good.
Yeah.
It's not going to be what we want it to be, or it's not stable. We've got a bunch of peep twist on it. Some of the first strings we built, we would put them on a bow and we'd pull them back. And as you're pulling back, you're just watching the peep twist. And I was like, why is this doing this?
That's what I was about to ask. Has that method, has that helped with like peep twists and everything?
Oh, it's gone. Like that's one of the things that Nate was saying on his string. He brought his bow in several months after we put a set of strings on it. He said, hey, I want you to look at the string. Well, I thought it was a problem. I started looking at it and I was like, Nate, I said, I'm missing something, buddy. What's wrong? He's like, nothing.
7,000 shots.
Yeah, 7,000 shots. There was no serving separation anywhere.
There was a hair of serving separation, but that was like on the cam loop itself.
Yeah, so that's
where it hooked onto the cam. I'm like, that's expected.
So there's a difference between serving separation and serving cracking. So anywhere where you have the string make a real tight turn, a real tight bend, you're going to have serving cracking right there.
Yeah, and that's all I had.
Yeah,
and then my own stupidity, I guess you could say, from hanging my release like you told me not to do on the loop all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And that had like a little wear on the serving and on the string, but other than that, like no fuzzies, nothing. And that thing it sat in the heat of the stand and getting wet in the rain and everything, and it just did not care.
Well, I just remember setting up bows with other aftermarket strings that we used to go, and it almost became a default where we were like, hey man, like if you got time, go home, shoot this thing like as many times as you can. You bring it back to us, it's free. Like I'm probably gonna have to fix some peep twists on it. It's gonna be free. It just is gonna take some shots to get it out and everything. And that was kind of like a standard of putting a new set of strings on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's with this new material. Part of it is the material we're using. Part of it is the process that we're doing. It is an extremely stable bundle.
It is.
And
I think I had not even like a 16th of a turn on my peep after about 200 shots, and I brought it in, and you guys, we didn't even have to make a peep adjustment. We just twisted the D loop.
Yeah,
fixed it right up.
Yeah.
Never once had actual rotation.
Right.
I was like, this is insane. I've never seen this. And it blew my mind.
Have you conquered the peep rotation out of a solo cam?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not there anymore.
That's a task in itself right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So solo cam. So a string on like a Hoyt Alpha X is going to be, 30 something inches long, right? Mm-hmm. A solo cam bow might have a 90-inch string.
Yeah.
On it.
Just because that thing wraps around that solo cam down at the bottom and then comes up into itself and back into the other cam.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're dealing with an 80 or 90-inch string, it's all that more important for that bundle to be stable. And yeah, some of those first ones that we would build, man, I would get so mad. I would throw it away. I would just dump it. We had something wrong. Get rid of it. We can't use this. Mm-hmm. And so we finally got that figured out, and we're still learning. Every day we're still learning new stuff with that. With the guys that are working in the string company, building stuff. We're always trying to tweak and get stuff a little bit better, trying to change our process a little bit to make a cleaner looking string. So that's where we're at on that. So it was really cool to put that string on your bow because I knew you were going to shoot a ton, and really get some feedback on it. So
yeah, 2024, I'm pretty sure I've put more arrows through a bow than I have the rest of my life combined.
Yeah.
I took it way too serious, honestly. I made it like an addiction.
Oh yeah.
And then hunting season started and had fun, made some things not move anymore.
Yeah, you tagged out, man.
And then I put one of those arrows that everybody said was too light. Or, y'all didn't say it, but a lot of people would say it was way too light. I put one through the skull of a hog, about 120-pound hog, and out that rear end, and it flew about 10 yards past.
Yeah,
I was like,
crazy.
Who's going to say I'm not carrying energy now?
Yeah.
And then I think I came in here just towards the end of the season to have y'all just check everything out. Towards the end of the season, it's been banged around a bunch, and I was like, hey, I kind of just want to do a health check on this thing.
Right.
And that's when I saw your bow, the Hoyt, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then y'all told me, and I was like, oh, I'm entering this raffle.
Yeah.
And man, the day that you were like, what color strings would look good on this? I was like, I don't know. Why the heck is he asking me what color strings would look good on this? I was like, I like red.
Well, I had red on it at the time.
Yeah, you had red on it. I had red on my Hoyt or on my lift. I'm a Huskers fan, so I bleed red.
There you go.
And I was like, I don't know, red would look good again. He's like, all right, well, we'll get some red strings made up for you, and we'll stick them on there. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, I didn't even know what to say. I was speechless.
Yeah. He just ran up to me and gave me a hug. I was like, all right, that's good. Don't make it weird.
Yeah. And I've entered so many raffles in my life, like going back to bake sales in grade school and stuff like that. Never won a thing in my life. And I walked out of here, and I'm not going to lie, I was driving home and I was crying like a little baby.
Oh, man. Yeah, really cool.
I was like, this thing is going to be, I will never get rid of it. Even if I stop shooting that bow one day, it's going to be a wall hanging.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That bow is never going anywhere.
Yep. Yeah. It turned out to be a really cool bow. And it's a blast to shoot.
And we got the next project now too.
Yep. So we're not going to reveal that yet, but we've got another bow that we're getting ready to do. That'll be a lot of fun. So I'm excited about getting that one going here soon, but But yeah, so that's your story.
Yep.
That you shared a lot with us about your military journey, your career in the military, and what that looked like, and how you got into archery and everything. So that's really cool to hear about that. And our original goal was whoever we gave the bow to, we were going to bring them in and we were going to do a hunt and everything. Well, we didn't get to do that with Nate because he'd already tagged out, which is 12 deer in Georgia. So that's pretty impressive.
It was a good year.
Yeah. So I
got skunked every year going back to 2016 before that.
Yeah.
I've been skunked for 7 years.
Yeah. Well,
I was like,
needless to say, you figured it out this year or last year now.
Lots of time.
Yeah.
And throwing a couple cell cams out where we thought might be a good idea just to get an idea what the population was doing on public land. Definitely changed the game this year.
Yeah.
I mean, before we were running no cameras and we were like, there's some sign here.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a spot.
Oh yeah. 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 Trail cameras are great when you use them the right way. When you overuse them and you become lazy, then they're not very good.
Yeah. And we only went to cell cams just for the fact of like, it's less pressure.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Going
less
in and out, checking them and stuff. Yeah.
Because we were 2 years ago or 2023 season, we were going out every other day to check SD cards.
Yeah.
And we didn't see anything.
Yeah, it's just
I saw some hogs
and all that, everything
Especially
that goes
on
along
public
with it.
land where it really makes them skittish.
Yep. And I hunt Griffin Ridge almost exclusively, and that was, you're not going to see no Boone and Crockett bucks out there, but if you want to put some meat in the freezer, they got enough out there you can. You just got to figure out the patterns, and they're weird. And that hurricane this year after however many days, was it a month of no rain? That messed everything up. I was bound to tag out by October 1st. And then that hurricane hit and it slowed it down. We had them pretty patterned out. And then everything went to, hell in a handbasket real quick.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And we had to reset and figure everything out again. And then I pulled it together one day. I had one just insane day for rifle season.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I was like, put the tools away.
There you go.
And then I think I came in here and told y'all, I was like, what's 7 plus 2? Or I was like, what's 9 plus 2? You're like, 11? I was like, yep. Because me and my buddy went back and looked on all my tag saves, and I was one shy. And I was like, I have a tag left.
Yeah, and
So
it was the last week of the season or something.
It was like 2 weeks left, and I went out. My buddy wasn't going out because I don't have a truck. So, if I want to go to Griffin Ridge half the time, and for anyone that's been there, unless you got a truck, you're parking right at the trailhead. You got to walk 3-4 miles in to get to any of the spots. And I'm not saddle hunting yet. That's the goal for this year, is to get in a saddle.
Right.
And lighten the load. But I was carrying sticks and a platform and bow, and especially when it's hot during the day, I just got old so quick. So it was unless my buddy was going out, I wasn't going out there. And I tried a different spot, and that was a waste of my time. that was a waste of my morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out real good a few days.
Yeah. Well, we'll get a hog hunt or two in with that new bow here soon.
Oh yeah. It's got to eat soon.
Before it gets hot, we'll get out and do some hog hunting. But anyway,
I'm always up for some hog hunting.
Yes, sir. That's a lot of fun. Man, well, good stuff. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for being on the podcast, sharing your story with us, and excited to shoot that bow together.
Oh yeah,
it'll be happening.
2025 is going to be a fun year.
There you go. All right, cool. We'll cut her off right there. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Hey, reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear about. Join the conversation online. Hop over on your favorite social channel and give us some comments. Shoot us an email. You can email us at podcast@bowtreader.com. That's BOWTREADER.com. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about maybe if you want to come join us on the podcast, or any kind of topics that you want us to cover, regardless of what it is. If it's hunting related, something that's specific to
bows or arrows, new gear, old gear. If you got any kind of spiritual questions, anything about your faith that you're interested in, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to cover it for you. And thank you again so much for listening. God bless you.